Yeah.
Yep.
So, soil food webs, really important. Why? Because Dr. Elaine Ingham, back in the 80s, she actually did these experiments with plants in pots, and in those pots she had soil, and sometimes they had in one set of pots bacteria, another there was fungi, another there was protozoa, another there was nematodes, and the only were
The pots that had every single organism in
so this is what we so this is why we're particularly keen to talk about soil food webs. We use microscopes to look at these things. They're tiny, tiny, tiny. The bacteria are only about the width of your hair. So basically,
they can actually see the boards now.
they can't see the board. Oh, now we're having slight internet issues. Good oh, can you see us? So the bacteria, we have bacteria
Down here, and you
and
can see the bacteria
and
and
fungi,
fungi.
and they're both bags. Effectively, they take in the nutrients which are they get from the sugars that the roots put out from the plants when they make these sugars.
Yep.
And
These nutrients aren't available to the plants at this stage though. So that brings in the protozoa
Yep.
and the nematodes.
which are then predators, and they gobble up the bacteria and the fungi and spit out the bits that they don't need. So if you didn't hear us earlier, what we were saying is, for instance, the protozoa have a carbon to nitrogen ratio of 20:1, and the bacteria have a carbon to nitrogen ratio of just 5:1. But what does that mean? Fungi, those protozoa come along, gobble up 1, 2, 3, 4 bacteria, and they get their 20 carbon, but now they've got 4 nitrogen. They only need 1. Uh-oh, bellyache, pop it out. Now it's available to the plants.
Yep.
So that's basically that little bit. Can you see the questions? Because I can't.
Oh, someone's commented if the boards on the chairs might be more comfortable for us. That is true. It might have been.
It might have been, but we just
Yeah.
wanted that just to start with. So
One of the things that's a benefit of knowing about this information is we are able to allow the organisms to do the work for us. So because by having them in the soil and they're able to release the nutrients in a form that's available to the plants, it means we're not necessarily having to add those nutrients ourselves, which is also saving us money, which is great, and also preventing excess runoff. So did you want to talk about that a bit more, Ellen?
Yeah, love this part because it's not only about us. So basically, before I do, I'll just touch on the fact that when you've got these, the way this biological method of growing things is that the plant is always sending out these messages. So it's like these cakes and cookies effectively. So the plant is taking these sugars that we talked about, and that converts some of them into starches, and then there's into proteins and things. So if you think about sugars as being the sugar that's in our pantry or honey, and then we've got the starches like flour and thing, and we've got the proteins like milk and eggs and so on. And in the pantry we've got those things, we can bring them out and then we make them up into all sorts of things, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. What do you like?
Oh, don't mind me a bit of carrot cake.
Don't mind you a bit of carrot cake? I rather like a bit of apple pie too.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So these plants are really clever. They say, we know Bonnie can go and find some boron for us. We're going to make some carrot cake from these proteins and starches and things we've got, and off we go.
Woohoo.
And thanks very much for bringing that back, Bonnie. That was really good. And so the plant gets what it needs from what it wants. So this biological method of doing this actually brings in the flavours of the foods and the aromas of the foods. It becomes really nutrient dense. And so if you think about that, for instance, cannabis growers and hemp growers are really using these biological methods because they need to get all those flavours and aromas into their product. Legal ones we're talking about here, of course, too, with the medicinal compounds that are needed. And so that's really a big thing for why we're doing that part. I hope you remember your question because it's sort of vanished on my sidetracking way.
I asked about runoff.
You did. And so the reason why that's really important is because we really care about the environment too. And so this part becomes that when we have the nutrients held in the soil, they are, it's not only the nutrients, but the fact that the soil's got structure. It means that when it rains, the soil, every drop of rain you're going to get is actually going to land on that soil and be held. It's not going to go running off and take the nutrients leaching with it. So it's just so important that we look and care for our waterways.
Quite often too, we think that if something's good for a plant, you know, we'll put it on our gardens or whatever, and quite often we think, well, it's a good thing, can't have too much of that, and we're adding all these things, even like manures.
Yep.
And if the plant doesn't actually need those nutrients at that point in time, even though it's not chemical or man-made, the plant's not going to take it up, and we are still having runoff. So I think there was from
that research.
the research,
Yeah, so from the Department of Water in Western Australia, the research actually showed that most of the runoff that goes into the Swan coastal catchment areas, and this is pretty shocking, actually comes from home gardeners on smaller blocks like 700 square metres and lower, who are using organic fertilisers, organic things like your sheep manure and your cow manure. So even those can actually cause a problem. Now, we're all human, and I'm sorry to admit that I had an excess of some straw and rabbit poo and whatever, and I just thought, I better put this out, and I probably shouldn't have done. Because what happens too is, like you said, the plants then get these nutrients, and they don't bother putting out these sugars and these cakes and cookies in order to be able to get hold of the other, you know, to produce these things. They get lazy. Have we got some questions?
Yeah,
there?
I'm just going to check what questions we've had, so excuse my face
And
zooming
let's
in.
see what's
How big a deal is the type of organic matter? Compost, manure, leaves, wood chips? That's from Claire Russell.
Yep. So it's anything that's lived before. Basically, I love composting. I love worm castings. I love wood chips. And I think, well, actually, I think we can say we do, you know, when it comes to those things. Those are the sort of things that are going to give you a good variety. So when you're doing, are you talking about composting, Claire? Because the different things, bacteria really like to eat soft, greener sort of things. And so your lawn clippings are going to be great for them. And as far as the fungi go, they more like to chew on your bark and your wood and things like that, the really tough stuff. And so those ones, like the wood chips, will be useful. Fish hydrosylates there. And even, did you know that you can use a bit of milk on your garden? The calcium that it brings in, and it's supposed to be helpful for helping with the hydrophobic nature of things too.
I didn't know that, and it's interesting you've just said that, because Mandy Jane did ask, how do you help hydrophobic soil?
Oh, I must have known something, Mandy. So, yeah, so hydrophobic soils are caused by a couple of things. One is a bit like the gum leaves and things that are falling down, so you actually just get that from some of the plants. The other bit is from bacteria that form a waxy coating as they're drying out, so as the soil dries out. So it's a bit of a catch-22 in that you need to get it moist, and then it tends to stay moist.
Yep.
But so things for that are worm castings are really good, because they have all of these sort of bacteria and other microbes in them that actually help offset these problems. And also the bit of milk, a little bit, you know, maybe
I see that Mandy Jane's asked full cream milk only. Does that matter?
Well, I don't think so. I think it's more the other bits in there. So if you've got access to a bit of raw milk, I'd use that, because that's obviously got more nutrients and more organisms and things.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm.
So I'd just like to go back briefly and touch on, so we're talking about putting things in our garden, and it may be in excess even though it's a good thing. So one of the things that I understand we can do is to actually put these things into your compost first.
Yes.
Can you touch on that for our viewers, please?
Yes, I can. And what a sensible thing to do. Anything should go through your compost first, pretty much, is a safe way of looking at it. And so we're here on a 280 square metre block at the moment, and so I don't know if you can see them, but in the background we've just got 2 black compost bins, and so it's a matter of how much room you've got and things. But yes, anything where you've got it, anything through the compost first. And in fact, if you need to add a bit of fertiliser, let's go back to some statistics. I like a bit of maths. That fertiliser, when you put your fertiliser, like the granulated fertiliser on the soil,
Yep, sure.
around about 80% of that just gets leached away. The plant only takes up about 20% because it's only going to take up what it needs at the time.
Yeah.
So what you can do is actually take that 20% and put it in your compost, put it through your compost, and the compost actually acts as a bit like a pantry. It holds on to it, the nutrients, until the plant wants it. And not
Right.
only that,
You mean once you've applied the compost to the plant?
yeah,
Yep.
once you've applied the compost to around the plant. And so because the compost has lots of living organisms in it, when it's a good healthy compost, in the way we talk about compost is an alive compost. And so, yeah, they get it when they want it.
Perfect. All right, we'll just see what other questions we have.
And if you do,
Read
if
my
you'd
mind.
like us to actually do another little segment after this, where we actually we'll grab a sample of the compost and take it in and look at it under a microscope and show you what's actually in that sample that we take, let us know, and we'll see if we can arrange that.
Costa. Hi, Costa. Costa has said, so you recommend to people to have a mix of leaf mulch and wood chip to satisfy fungi and bacteria?
Well, leaf mulch is... Yeah, so Costa, yeah, it's great to hear from you, and it's been, I always enjoy catching up with you when we get the opportunity. The leaf mulch, it tends to be a bit more still on the fungal side. So basically, like your grass clippings and the greens are really good for your bacteria. Your soil, your fish emulsions. There's a difference between fish emulsions and fish hydrosolate. That's also good.
Fantastic. There's a question about, can you explain how to make compost tea?
Well, so can we explain how to make compost tea? So first up, ideally you want to have some good compost, and you want to know that your compost is a good one. If you've got access to a microscope, and here I'm going to make a shameless plug for the fact that we would love for every community garden to access funds available through the government and their community garden programs, or the shires through their community grants and so on, to get a microscope so that you can have it for your members to be able to have a look and see what's in their soil. And obviously,
And for your general community?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's just so important. You can't tell by just looking at the soil as to really what's in it. So going back to the compost
tea.
and compost tea, is that compost, we need to think about that it's a living thing, and then there's extract. So the extract is where you're just pouring water through it, and you can make just an ordinary tea where you put the compost in a bag and put it in a bucket. What do you use? Do you put it in a bag? I usually use that white bucket thing.
Yeah, so, well, it's basically the concept of making a tea. So you have your compost in a bag. You can use the linen bags, are a great example. So you want to be able to submerge a portion of compost into water without it.
Yeah, and only putting
Dirty
about a
water.
couple of 100 grams in about 20 litres of water. That's all you need. And,
And so then you're aerating it?
yeah, oh no, so one, you can just put it in and dangle it and use it, and then you can aerate it. So aerated compost tea is something that you might hear about, and people just use a bubbler to do that, so like from an aquarium pump or something.
And why would you do that, Ellen?
Why would you do that? So they all have different purposes, and so the compost, let's go back to the compost extract, so where you're just pouring the water through the compost, that effectively is going to bring all the organisms that you might have in your compost, bacteria, fungi, protozoa and nematodes, you should find in a good compost. So that's going to actually have all of those organisms plus food available. So the micro aggregates and the aggregates are going to come through as well and feed your plants. So your plants, remember we said that you need to have organisms, but you also need to have food for them. When you go into your compost teas, your aerated compost teas, they're more useful for doing things like foliar sprays, where you want to get because basically you're getting a multitude of microbes, particularly like your bacteria and so on. And so the use of those is to, particularly as I say, for the foliar sprays, to help with pests and diseases. So if you've got an outbreak of a bit of a disease, then a foliar spray of a good compost tea is going to help.
Could you explain what the difference is between applying a compost tea to your garden as opposed to just applying the compost. What are the benefits or the differences
Yep.
between the two?
So a compost isn't going to go too far. So basically a bucket, if you take a 10 litre bucket of compost, it's not going to go all that far. You should only be putting a really tiny amount on, and this is one of those ones where more is better, or less is better.
Less is more.
Less is more.
Less is more.
Less is more. So just about a millimetre thick or something like that, again of a good compost. And so then you're actually getting microbes plus the food. So you're actually building that organic matter in the soil and you're getting the microbes. With the compost tea, then you're actually inoculating, you're getting the microbes. So you'd want to use that, as I say, where you're missing microbes, where you need to get a bit of a head start.
Right, let's see what other questions we have here. Read my mind. Can you explain compost tea? Oh, milk got it. So, oh, yep. That would be awesome. That would be great. Yes, please.
Oh, is that regarding the compost sample? Oh, we can do that. That would be
Shame.
fun because we know how much I love playing with microscopes.
You're so grateful. Brilliant. Oh, okay. So it looks like we've covered most of the questions. Is there any other questions anyone else has at this stage? And I saw a bit further up. Sorry. Oh, someone said something. I've heard about these microscopes of yours, Ellen. So did you want to let people know what we do as part of our business, aside from...
Oh, yeah. So basically we do public awareness raising, where we come out and we can come and give a talk to your land care group or your garden group at minimum cost. So we'll just talk to us about that to see what we can arrange. We bring a microscope with us. We give a lot more information about these things. Then we also do things like come to the Kalamunda Garden Festival in person, so you can bring along your sample and see what's there. This weekend we've got a fantastic special where you can actually send us samples and we'll do an assessment and a bit of consult. Check out the album and our website for that one, or the album for that one. And we also train people how to use microscopes to identify the organisms and to assess their soil health. And that we can do, like I say, for community gardens, for land care groups. We work with farmers, we work with orchardists, we work with tree growers,
home gardeners wanting to grow their own organic vegetables.
Yes.
Something I'm quite passionate about.
Yeah. We work with biodynamic farmers, so
Yep.
it's good fun.
There's Kalamunda Plant Company. Is that you, Andrew? Would love to see you do something with the microscope. So we were going to do...
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we might do is we might finish up here and we'll check, and if there's any other questions, then we will we'll respond to those in a minute. And what we'll do is give us about 15 minutes, 10, 15. Oops, sorry.
There we go. And one last question. How do you rate worm farms and their output next to compost?
Oh, love worm farms. And so I think for me, my compost generally turns into a worm farm. But the worm farm, because worms, they actually produce so much fertiliser and nutrients in what they do. It's just amazing what they actually put out. And they put out all of these little, as I say, these like hormones and like this quorum sensing stuff, these signals and things in their exudates that are amazing. They can help stop frosts attacking your plants. They can help, as I say, with the hydrophobic nature of things. Yep, definitely worm farms are a real plus. And you can actually do worm farms that are fungally based by putting in wood chips, using wood chips and things.
So shall we end it there and we'll come back?
Yeah, we shall see in about 15 minutes or so.
Yeah, we'll set up the microscope and then we can show you a bit more about what we actually do on the microscope side of things.
Oh, and we get to go digging in the compost to get a sample too.
Fantastic. So we'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.